So what do you do when you've got $500 million of dodgy cash to stash and it just won't fit under a mattress? Where's the next safest place? How about stuff it under a hospital? That's what the IDF is saying that Hezbollah has done in a money bunker they built beneath the Sahel hospital in Beirut. And with Netanyahu needing a new bedroom window but vowing to fight on, Blinken trying to persuade everyone to join hands in a circle of love, and Iran looking skyward and seeing nothing but the lovely twinkle of stars, what the hell is going on? We'll take stock of it, of all the latest news in Israel's war against Hezbollah and those who fund it.
Welcome to a new episode of the reality show. Today we're joined by Kirk and Anders. Hi guys. Before I come to you guys for your views, Daniel, can we play the video just to provide a bit of a context about what we're talking about? What we're seeing here is an IDF, IDS,
IDF footage.
IDF, yeah, sorry, footage about a hospital in Beirut, which is just to the east of the international airport. The IDF suggests that this bunker is under the hospital, and it's got two entrances on either side. You see the buildings either side where the entrance are, and those vaults, they suggest $500 million in cash and gold is kept by Hezbollah. So, Anders, how do you feel about? Have you seen the stuff? What's your opinion about it? How do you?
Well, I'm not surprised about the $500 million because we know that Hezbollah has a large network of operations, and they're obviously financed by Iran and other mercenaries in the Middle East. So that part of it doesn't surprise me at all. I'm a little bit surprised or confounded by Israel's tactics. Number one, I don't have a problem with them blasting this to pieces, but wouldn't they have to go in with troops on the ground to secure these $500 billion if they're there in cash and gold? Because how else to prevent them from being dispersed and just restashed somewhere else? I actually think that I saw some notes about the Lebanese saying, yeah, we need these 500 billion desperately to rebuild our country. But I think they should go towards paying for Israel's costs in this war as a down payment towards a peace agreement. So I haven't seen anybody making that argument yet, but hopefully it will come up.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, it's an interesting technique, the IDF releasing this information early like this. I mean, what do you make of it, Kirk, in terms of your first reaction to this story?
Well, I mean, to play devil's advocate, I believe, if I recall correctly, Hezbollah translates to party of God. And if they're having all this money underneath the hospital, I mean, who's to know they're not using that money to do stuff that God would want it used for, like helping pay for some desperate families' emergency room bills? How do we know they're not doing good stuff with that money? I mean, they're keeping it in a hospital. It's probably going for some goodwill activities. What do you guys think?
Do you think it's important to keep that kind of money in gold, particularly, just in case?
Maybe. I mean, with today's inflation, but
maybe.
Hey, Kirk, where is your hijab?
Don't tell the Ayatollah.
And I think one of the other things that the IDF has pointed out about this rather large complex, which they claim is under the hospital, and obviously that was illustrative footage that they showed. It was, drawings and a mock-up of what it looks like, according to the IDF. It includes things like beds and things, and it's supposedly where Nasrallah was also using as a hideout for some of the time that he was alleged, that he was alive. That's certainly what they're alleging. But we have certainly seen in the past few hours a large tour of journalists looking at the hospital, and some of their reactions have been interesting, haven't they?
Yes. According to different news outlets, the Lebanese have offered the foreign press, a tour of the hospital, allegedly no hold bars. A tour of the hospital to allow the journalists to verify the information from the IDFs. Obviously, you know, people like BBC, Al Jazeera, whatever, they've come back saying, yeah, nothing to see here. The IDF are clearly lying. We haven't seen anything dodgy, which seems to be like if the IDF has released this kind of information without knowing something a bit more or having a plan for it, this is going to backfire massively in terms of propaganda. They're going to be accused of lying, and it's going to bring down their credibility. Not that the pro-Hamas guys need any excuse to blame Israel for whatever, but this is going to prove some ammo for them. And frankly, I don't know what the game is. We've been trying to work out what the heck has been going on. But this kind of statement follows an attack on Sunday in the south of Beirut on a financial institute called ARCUK Al-Hassan, which is a Sharia financing institution. It's effectively a bank that works for within the Muslim rules for Lebanon. It's been providing cash, if you like, in a kind of parallel financing to the failing financial institutes in Lebanon. So anyway, IDF hit somebody's sites because they're obviously linked to funding from Iran. Anders, have you heard about these links? Can you kind of work out why the IDF would have done something like this?
Well, I think it's obviously important to take out, I mean, as part of an overall strategy, I would think it important to block the financial streams of cash and gold and whatever. What I'm wondering, and where I'm not sure about how this works, is Hezbollah and Iran, in this case, are they forced to operate outside of electronic financial systems? And is it truly cash and gold and other assets that are being transported back and forth to finance these operations? Or is Israel, by doing this, assuming that what they're doing, that they know what they're doing, are they just putting a dent, if you like, in the overall operation? Because, I mean, these guys are not stupid, you know, they're pretty financially savvy. So I'm not sure in the end how much effect it will have. If it is the case that the Hezbollah fighters have to be paid in cash or gold, because, you know, the financial infrastructure is just not there in all of Lebanon or southern Lebanon, yeah, then it can probably be more of a blow to that organization. But if not, I'm not sure how much of an impact it will have in the medium term.
I think what I've seen from the IDF in terms of some of the footage they've released and some of the explanation they've given for this is that also this is part of a bigger structure of how Hezbollah is funded. They also talked about how Iran uses diplomatic flights to get money into Lebanon, and of course also by road as well. And so I'm not sure this is the total funding of Hezbollah. This is probably some of it, and maybe it's some backup funding as well. But I think what's interesting about it at the moment is to release this information as early as the IDF have chosen to, ahead of accessing the hospital themselves. You would assume from that they would have substantially concrete evidence to take that step. And of course, whether that's to prompt, you know, I think they were trying to highlight two elements to it. The fact that Iran funds a lot of this money, and the fact that a lot of this comes from Lebanon itself via, as Marco was outlining there, the use of this Sharia fund, etc., within Lebanon. So it was highlighting the two forms by which Hezbollah receives its money. But when you see these journalists, I'll come to you, Kirk. When you see these journalists walking around, going into, coming out of the morgue or the where they store medical waste, we saw Orla Guerin from the BBC doing one such report, where she's, you know, effectively doing nothing more than, well, it's not in this cupboard, and it's not in this cupboard. I mean, a hospital is a big place, and what the IDF has really tried to point out is exactly where it is. I don't know that they've actually been to the precise location within it that the IDF is highlighting, But is there risks here, do you think, Kirk, to this being a PR problem if it can't be proven and proven fairly swiftly?
I mean, this is I think there's a big problem with fog of war, especially with the way people like to apply selective skepticism to whatever the source is. You know, we're relying heavily on the IDF, and I imagine anyone could say, well, that's the IDF. They have, you know, some sort of propaganda bias here, or I'm trying to find the better terms. Like they have an agenda that they want to pursue by putting such information or reports out there. But then, as we've seen, there's been a lot of corruption throughout various media institutions. I know you guys mentioned BBC and Al Jazeera earlier. Absolutely. Same with the Associated Press. And just consider how many reports we've heard throughout this conflict about you know, schools in Gaza that you know, they, oh well, we found some weapons, we found some secret entrances to tunnels. So on one hand, it wouldn't surprise me if what the IDF is saying about this hospital is true, but yeah, it's a little hard to verify right now. But it also wouldn't surprise me if some journalists are, I mean, we're going to get into the story about the United Nations here in a minute, I imagine, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are some journalists who are, you know, maybe deciding to not really put on their, pull out their magnifying glass and look over a corner to see maybe a secret entrance to a gold bunker. And while I'm here, you know, it does sound like if it's true that Hezbollah has all this cash to spend, I think it's time that Israel send in some beeper and pager salesmen back into Lebanon.
Yeah, the bean counters. Yeah. As we shown in the clip earlier on, I mean, the actual bunker is under the hospital, but the accesses, according to the IDF, are on either side from the building, either side. So if the hospital invites people to check the basement of the hospital itself, chances are they will not find any access to the bunker. The access is from the other building. So even that is a kind of dangerous gamble that the IDF took, because they effectively allow the press to go and visit the hospital and say legitimately, oh, there's nothing here. Yeah, because you've been looking in the wrong place. And as Richard pointed out, the money into Beirut from Iran literally flies on a plane. We saw after the Nasrallah killing that the new boss of Hezbollah, Qassam, has been actually flown to Tehran with a diplomatic flight. The foreign minister from Iran actually flew into Beirut and gave shelter to the guy and brought him back to Tehran. And that's the same route, and that, you know, cases of oil, Iranian money comes through into Hezbollah.
It's as you say, it's the fog of war at this point, so it's difficult to know for certain. But I mean, Anders, from an objectivist point of view, I mean, what the point that Rand makes about the onus of proof means that we're going to need more than this, and we're going to need it swiftly. Is that your view as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think Israel definitely need to secure the evidence, so to speak. I mean, I don't put any the journalists reporting. I mean, it's. I don't take that as proof of anything not existing. It's like, you know, your standard propaganda tours of North Korea and the old Soviet Union and all totalitarian regimes. You know, you always find journalists who are sympathetic to the cause and who will report basically, or mouthpiece, what it is that the leaders want to do. And I suspect, I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that this is in a similar vein. But obviously, I think whether it's to present proof to the world or not, I think it's important for Israel to go in and secure the site, you know, sooner rather than later. That would be my hunch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the reporters who's been in is a guy called Steve Sweeney. Now, when you look into Steve Sweeney, it doesn't take very long to dismiss him as a journalist and not worthy of the name. I mean, he's a journalist for the Morning Star to start with, which is the communist newspaper of the UK, such as there's a readership of about 10.5 people, but nevertheless, and he's when you look at his Twitter account, he's got things like "I'm a Muscovite, I stand with Russia" all over it. So, and his quote on having been given the tour of the hospital was that the Israel was quote repeating a pattern seen in Gaza, with attempts to link the hospital to Hezbollah, a smokescreen to justify an attack. So he's going the extra step. Since the IDF haven't done a strike on this building yet, to claim that this is just a ruse because the Israelis like bombing hospitals, you can assume is his his stance on this. I mean, which sounds pretty ridiculous to me. But yeah, Kirk.
Yeah, that's a thought that crossed my mind, is that if the IDF reports turn out to not be true, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of people like this clown show you just talked about say, oh, well, they just say stuff like this as an excuse so that they can bomb civilian targets because, that IDF, they're just bloodthirsty and they just want to kill everyone and anyone they deem an enemy or whatever.
Yeah.
I was trying hard not to use the G word there,
What strikes me is how much we've learned about Lebanon. Well, we knew it was a failed state in the first place. I mean, that's been known since the end of the French Mandate, probably. But it's incredible how much Hezbollah is embedded in the fabric of the political scene in Lebanon itself. Of course, Hezbollah has got a side which is a more legitimate political side, which is actually represented in the Lebanese parliament, but also this big component, financial and military component, which is clearly embedded in the fabric of society itself. The Beirut area, the Shiite area, is very much the source of all the Islamic financing and the connection with Iran and the support for the naked support for Hezbollah that we've seen lately, and where Israel has been hitting specifically in Lebanon itself, the very precise striking on caches of weapons and various command centers, various area where money or financial support is provided. It's actually highlighted how much Lebanon is effectively a failed state which has been totally infiltrated by Hezbollah. And we also seen how much Hezbollah is in bed with certain other international organizations, for example, the UN. Anders, have you seen the news about how close the UNIFIL, which is supposed to stop Hezbollah from attacking Israel, and how much actually it's collaborating with Hezbollah and UNIFIL and UN?
Yeah, I've seen that, and it obviously is disgusting. It's just another reason for United States to leave the UN. It's one in a long row of UN peacekeeping failures. I don't think you can point to any operation that has successfully led to long-term freedom for the people involved. At best, it has gotten to a stalemate, like Cyprus, like Korea. You could argue that the Balkans, after the Kosovo War, it's just a stalemate. You have all the resentment simmering under the surface there, and it's still probably ready to explode at any time again. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think the extent to which they were under the thumb of Hezbollah, I had not realized. But again, unfortunately, that's just the nature of UN peace operations. And if you look at the nations that have been involved, and yes, you have to consider that there are individuals involved here that may have different opinions. But you take a country like Ireland, for instance, who has over the years made up a large contingent of UNIFIL. And we know that Ireland, they're colonizers within quotation marks. So they always root for the underdog, regardless of where the underdog stands morally, etc. So I wouldn't be surprised that many of the sentiments among some of the Irish troops were towards Hezbollah instead of Israel across the border. And similarly for other countries, they're in the list of countries that have been involved. There are several Muslim countries. What do the Malaysian troops think about this conflict and such? Are they able to stay neutral, or when Hezbollah comes knocking, are they thinking that here comes the good guys?
Yeah, thank you, Anders. And thank you also to Bull Moose we got a super chat from Bull Moose. Thank you. And Bull Moose raises a point which I think is particularly emerged in the last few hours as well, which is that Hezbollah terrorists interrogated by Shin Bet revealed that they have bribed UNIFIL to let them operate next to them. Kirk, have you seen some details about this aspect of it and how close UNIFIL seem to be to being a pawn of Hezbollah in this network of evil?
Yeah, maybe we should start referring to UNIFIL as landfill, because it sounds like a total trash organization as far as I can tell. Yeah, when I was reading about this, there I've read reports today about how ex-UN soldiers basically said that, oh yeah, when we were, in the area that we were supposed to make sure Hezbollah wasn't operating in, we just turned cheeks and let Hezbollah violate international law. And then there are reports that Hezbollah members are admitting that they bribed UNIFIL members into turning a cheek and letting them, get away with violating not that international law is a legitimate concept, it isn't, but a lot of the people who like to huff and puff about Israel breaking international law, I doubt they're gonna really get worked up over Hezbollah breaking international law here. But yeah, when I read about this, it's like, yeah, it's nothing out of the ordinary here. We've seen a lot of these stories throughout the year with Hamas and UNRWA, United Nations relief work, whatever it's called. Long history of people of Hamas and UNRWA being in bed with one another, people working for both organizations. So yeah, this doesn't sound out of the ordinary. And to Anders' point earlier about, this is just another failed peacekeeping operation. The nicest thing you could say about the United Nations is that it's a completely useless organization that fails to, uphold its mission of preventing war and maintaining peace. And I know Anders mentioned Korea, and now I'm reading stories, you could say that, okay, the UN maybe helped prevent North Korea and South Korea with fighting with one another, but then they just handed half of Korea over to a brutal dictatorship who is now sending troops over to fight on Vladimir Putin's behalf in Ukraine. So yeah, they might have prevented North Korea and South Korea from fighting one another, but they're helping another war effort on the other side of the world. So from their perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to stress how corrupt the whole EU is. It's really
UN.
Sorry, UN is. I was coming to EU in a minute. I mean, we talked about it a number of times, that we focus on a number of organizations, a number of people, and it's just hard to put across to people who believe the UN is a good institution how actually corrupted they are. Ayn Rand already pointed out, 70 years ago when the UN was formed, that having China and communist Russia, the USSR, as members, permanent members with a veto, disqualifies the whole idea of an institution, because you cannot have the linchpins of corruption at the center of something which is supposed to be fighting some sort of corruption, or at least provide some sort of moral direction. How do you expect that? But I was talking about the EU earlier on, Freudian slip. Of course, France is deeply involved in the running of Lebanon. As a former French mandate, Lebanon, he still has very strong links with France. So much so that Macron keeps pushing money into there for whatever reasons. And another painful thing is that the second largest contingent of soldiers that staffs the UNIFIL missions in Lebanon is actually provided by Italy, which doesn't recognize Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. Italy went during a particularly lefty government, refused to follow other nations in the EU's view of Hezbollah, and that's why they are there. But being there means that they're also open to corruption from Hezbollah itself. That's why you have this kind of enmeshment between. We've seen images of tunnels, shafts, and all sorts of stuff, caches of weapons stored a few yards from a fort or a fortification from the UNIFIL, which is shocking.
And it also seems like UNIFIL have been using, or the Hezbollah have been using UNIFIL cameras as well to look at Israel from and taking over those cameras, or bribing or taking over the cameras. So I mean, that's another step to which they're using what should be a peacekeeping, what was literally what was set up and is sold as a peacekeeping. We know that the UN's use of words like peacekeeping is bogus, to say the least. But it's a level of corruption which is quite staggering, to be honest. I think it's shocking. I think there's been a whole load of news coming out all at once at the moment. There's lots of moving parts of what's going on in the bigger picture of this. And as the story about the strike which Hezbollah has now claimed on Netanyahu's home, which I referenced in the introduction there. What's your reaction to that particular incident and the response to it?
I guess we shouldn't be surprised. I am obviously happy that no serious damage was caused by this strike. I'm a little bit dismayed by the uproar that you see among certain people in Israel and elsewhere, that, they're trying to strike the prime minister. Now they have crossed a red line. So, but why is that different from killing an ordinary Israeli? Why is that different from forcing a large number of people from leaving their homes in northern Israel? Why is it different from everything else that has gone on over the last year to suddenly be up in arms about this because it's the prime minister? I think that is a lack of understanding of what we're talking about, and not having a correct moral compass, or it's about appeal to authority, and our great leader is now being great in quotation marks, is now being attacked, and suddenly that is a red line. I'm a little bit dismayed by that, actually.
Yeah, it's a weird event, because first of all, you have the component that a drone was actually allowed to go through the defenses and hit the area. I mean, the house is close to the Mediterranean coast, so the drone flying above the sea managed to actually hit the location without being intercepted. That in itself is quite worrying. And yeah, and the fact that they didn't retaliate with strength is again a sense of how Israel is fighting this war with kid gloves on, which is not helping anyone, certainly not helping themselves.
I think Hezbollah have said they've taken full, complete, and exclusive responsibility for it. They're obviously extremely proud of having cracked this bedroom window, and thankfully, no one was in at the time, neither Netanyahu nor his wife, and obviously no damage was done beyond that. But I think that says quite a bit, and also the reaction to this. I mean, Kirk, don't you think the reaction to this sort of indicates that people still in Israel are only waking up to the fact that this is actually a war? So, is it any surprise that Netanyahu would be a target in that context? It seems as if people are still trying to treat it as a skirmish or a series of events, and not a war.
Yeah, when thinking about this, it's Sounds like everyone in Israel, unfortunately, is a target, and I'm not sure that stuff like this is going to stop until Hezbollah and their sponsors, both financially and spiritually, the Islamic Republic of Iran, are completely neutralized. And yeah, I was surprised I haven't heard about this already until I woke up this morning and the story was sent to me by our producer. Shout out to Daniel. I haven't really seen much reporting on this. And that, imagine if you're just any world leader, even if you're from one of the crowd of, oh, we gotta make compromises and we gotta get a ceasefire, like the clown show in the State Department under Blinken is apparently doing. It's like, well, if they're going after the Prime Minister of Israel, what makes you think? Imagine if they were successful and they were allowed to get away with it. What message would that send to Hezbollah and Hamas and ISIS and the who's who of Islamic totalitarian thugs throughout the world? Like, oh, leaders of countries can just get assassinated, and the other world's leaders won't do much about it.
Yeah. I think Bull Moose has raised an interesting super chat on this subject. He says it's not different from a value perspective, but it is different in the sense of audacity. I guess you can certainly see that, particularly in the scheme of how of recent events with all the pager attack and everything. It is a piece of audacity that to know where Netanyahu's home is, to be able to strike it and get through as far as that. That certainly represents some worrying ability, and of course we don't know where exactly that will lead in the future. I also wanted to thank Bonnie for her super chat as well. So thank you very much, Bonnie, as always.
Kirk, you were talking about the response to it, and the response to it has been, as you mentioned, fairly lackluster, isn't it? That opens the painful wound of the response to the Iranian attack with ballistic missiles, doesn't it? Why on earth are we still at the point where Iran has not been punished for its ridiculous action? I mean, imagine if anybody else in the world were attacked by 200 ballistic missiles, not even made up cowboy rockets like we used to see from Gaza. I mean, this was an open declaration of war. Luckily,
and you guys mentioned earlier that Lebanon currently is a failed state. It fails to govern, it fails to secure the country. And it's like, well, who's largely responsible for that, if not the Islamic Republic of Iran, who sent Hezbollah there willingly and happily, helped Hezbollah set up shop in hopes that they would eventually take over the entire country. And they've been operating there ever since. And yeah, it's been a menace throughout that region and has kept tensions hot with Israel and has probably done a lot of wonders to undermine the Lebanese government's ability to govern and secure the country.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, one of the things that the IDF was highlighting the other day was that all of this money coming in from Iran and its effect on the inflation, etc., within Lebanon, which has been a horrendous level, and up in the three figures, and levels of unemployment, and it really is a failed state economically as well as by any other measure. I think, Anders, you've been away for a while recently, so I wanted to get your take on the non-reaction to the Iranian attack, and what you think is behind that, in terms of whether it's waiting, whether it's to do with the US election, whether it's to do with the moral certitude of Israel, or whether it's simply a strategic decision. I mean, what's your reaction to why so many weeks after that event we're still not seeing an actual response yet? Just a lot of talk about one.
Well, the short answer is all of the above, I think. Yeah, there is a mix of everything playing in. But what I would like to highlight and commenting on Kirk's comment that Iran is behind this and behind the tragic decline of Lebanon, who used to be the pearl of the Middle East, was a financial and cultural center and was thriving and was actually very prosperous. And to see where it has gone in the 50 years since, I mean, it's probably pretty much coincides with the Ayatollah getting back to Iran and establishing the Islamic Republic and starting to spread his venom across the region. But even more fundamental than Iran's influence, I think it's the US's betrayal of Western values in general, starting with the well, you can go back further, but starting with the hostage taking in Iran in 1979, 1980. That's really what kicked this off. And you could obviously even go back even further and say that, well, why on earth were they allowed to nationalize the oil resources, which has provided the money for all of this mayhem that's been going on now since the mid 1950s almost. So I think we can blame Iran, but I think the lack of confidence in Western civilization, in its cultural and financial superiority, is really the ultimate source for why we're dealing with what we're dealing with today. And if you look at this particular incident, I mean, it's just a microcosm of that lack of confidence. And I mean, we've seen it throughout the entire war. And in many ways, Israel is its own worst enemy because just like we here in the US and in Western Europe, Israelis are divided. They are culturally and philosophically confused. And it's that's why we're seeing all this hesitation and lack of decisiveness, if you like.
Yeah, and of course, well, one of the reasons that might have put a spanner in the works is the leak that occurred at the Pentagon, isn't it? Because it now looks like the investigation is occurring within the Pentagon. It looks like a woman of Iranian origin who worked as part of a delegation or something to do with a deal with Iran, actually leaked the documents regarding the attack on Iran itself, which probably might have not set back the response. And this in itself shows how little America takes this thing seriously. First of all, to if this is confirmed, to give a job, which is quite important in terms of dealing with whatever you want to do, and give it to somebody who's not properly clear, somebody who's not, beyond doubt, loyal to whatever it's doing, and then the first thing she does is leaking something like this. It shows how little and how in disarray the whole military in the West is, the whole approach to defense that we are taking right now.
I think one of the things you've seen is Blinken is on his 11th visit to the area. And out of the press release that I've seen released so far, it doesn't seem to be much of an apology for that side of it. I know they made some comments a few days ago, but at the moment, the emphasis is all on the usual stuff: hostage deal, aid to Gaza, those kind of things. I mean, Kirk, what do you think of how America is showing itself in this particular phase of the conflict? I mean, given all of these events.
It's very disappointing, and it's to continue what you guys and Anders were talking about, how we can talk about Iran and their role in this all we want, but also a huge influence has just been American weakness, and Blinken seems to be a continuation of that, looking to work out a ceasefire deal. Like, okay, I'm glad, if we can get some of the hostages back, that's great. And I hope they come back alive. But yeah, if Hamas is allowed to remain, even if if Israel got a Sinwar in their leadership, so we're just that's gonna be it. And this is to mention nothing about Hezbollah, and do they gotta have a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah as well? Right when they're launching attacks against Benjamin Netanyahu. What else can you say? It's and then on top of that, I think I forgot to mention earlier in regards to the United Nations. I gotta wonder if they're going to bring in the United Nations to maybe help orchestrate an agreement or whatever. And it's like if you're Israel, after seeing all these reports of the who's who of landfill UN agencies being cozy and in bed with Hamas and Hezbollah, why would you trust the United Nations to maintain peace ever again going forward?
Yeah, they certainly don't seem to recognize what the word peace means, or even what the word interim means, given how long that they've been operating in the south of Lebanon, and that forms part of the UNIFIL's name, for goodness sakes. I think what I heard Blinken say in terms of the hostages thing was that Israel should be, in quotes, capitalizing on Sinwar's death by doing a deal with Hamas, it would seem. How that capitalizes on the death of the leader, I don't know. It sounds like capitulating to the next leader, to be honest. And of course, you've got two tours going on at the moment, two tours of the area. I mean, Blinken's visiting a whole bunch of countries. He's going to, having seen Netanyahu the other day, met with Gallant, etc. He's also going to Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, his counterpart, the Iranian foreign minister, has been touring all of the Arab countries to persuade them not to participate or help at all in terms of allowing an Israeli response to the Iranian ballistic attack on Israel. I mean, it's a horrendous situation to see this both going on, all of this diplomacy, when really it would only be actions that would tell you anything. And this waiting game and this looping around in words is hugely frustrating to watch. I mean, Anders, what do you think on this?
Yeah, I mean, the level of moral betrayal of everything we should stand for is astounding, and then the level of evasion and this negotiation focus is astounding. It's very sad to see. I want to mention, going back to this State Department employee who leaked the information the other day. I think it's important to point out, though, that I don't have a problem with Iranians working for the State Department. This country, the U.S., we have a large Iranian community who are pro-freedom, pro-liberty, and they make for excellent employees in these departments and such. But you'd think, to your point, Marco, that they would vet them a little bit better and put them through a really hard grind to before they are let in the door, and especially before getting any kind of clearance of importance. But that being said, I think the Iranian diaspora is a huge resource for the good in this entire war.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
you're right, because most of them actually escaped the Khomeini takeover. So they know perfectly well what the threat the mullah and the ayatollah and all the other wackos, Islamic wackos, represent for civilization. But yeah, you would think that the kind of vetting would actually apply to everyone, not just people from different areas. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously this investigation is going on, but I understood that this person was a sort of director level within the Pentagon from the reports I'd read, giving them quite a substantial level of security clearance, which of course you would need in order to have access to the kind of information we're talking about. And one of the key aspects here is how much information was leaked. I mean, there's an indication that what's been out in the public domain about what was leaked could only potentially be a fraction of it, and if there is more, that might include more detail about specific sites that Israel is considering striking within Iran. But of course, well, we're going to have to see. I mean, Daniel's telling us she was already investigated before, and has produced a link. I don't know whether that's a link that you can include in the chat. I don't know exactly where that one goes, but maybe that might be worth including as well. Let me also thank at this point PC for your super chat. Thank you, PC, who points out, of course, Iran is a criminal regime, absolutely, and no doubt about it. And this seems the opportunity above all others for decades now to solve the influence of Iran on the entire Middle East region. And that's why that's why personally I'm so keen to see a strike on things like the nuclear sites and a degradation of their ability to create nuclear weapons.
Because ultimately, all this diplomatic musical chairs that we've been seeing, all these visits, I see these guys to try and convince them, you see the other guys to try and convince them. Ultimately, it's just designed to keep the status quo. It's just designed to stop Israel from striking and getting rid of the threat once and for all. Because in the end, even if there is an agreement, Iran still has the program for developing nuclear weapons. And just for the sake of giving the Democrats an easy ride until the next election, in a few weeks' time, what is gonna answer? The problem will still gonna be there. Iran will still influence and destabilize the area. They will still provide weapons, money, and supplies to all sorts of groups: Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, all sorts of outfits. Jihad as well. So why is this kind of behavior from the West supposed to what is it supposed to change? We've seen for the last 70 years that appeasing these areas, these people, doesn't lead to a solution. Ultimately, you have the side that's against Israel that wants the annihilation of Israel. There's no negotiating. They don't accept it to say solution. They have rejected over and over again. And every time they attack Israel, they vow to do it over and over again. There was a massive plot from Hezbollah to attack Galilee, even worse than October the 7th. Gaza did October the 7th. Gaza and Hamas did October the 7th. So why are we still treating these people like it's somebody you can deal with, as you would deal with, France or Germany or any other more or less civilized place? It's just beyond me.
Kirk, what are your thoughts about I know predictions is a dangerous game, and we obviously aren't, we don't have the strategic insight of this Iranian in the Pentagon, for example, to know exactly what might be happening in the future. But where do you see the next few weeks panning out in all likelihood, given all of the things that exist both in the US and in the Middle East region?
I don't really know what to expect. I would hope that the US and Israel would at least have a plan to think like, look, there's a lot of resentment in Iran toward this regime. A lot of people in Iran have had enough of these monsters. And this has been evident for at least 15 years, going back to the protests back in 2009. But there have been numerous mass protests, especially after in 2019, they had big protests due to just a horrible economy, and then the Masa Amini protests. And there's this opportunity. There's this country, Israel, that's fighting for its life, who I'm sure there are a lot of people in the military establishment in Israel who would love to do the US's dirty work for us, because we're not willing to do it ourselves after Hezbollah attacked the Marine barracks in Beirut in the early 1980s, after the Ayatollah put a fatwa on Salman Rushdie's head. Not to mention Masih Alinejad, a journalist who fled Iran and is in the United States. She's had attacks on her life on behalf of the Islamic Republic. And if we're not going to do anything about it, we might as well support Israel in doing so, and also really think about if that we can help the people, the better people of Iran, overthrow their rulers. But I guess Blinken and the current administration are just eager to cut deals and appease these monsters.
I think
I'm sorry, I didn't ask you your question. I'm not really good at making predictions, so
no,
I'm not sure if I'm one to make one.
And we're putting you horrendously on the spot even by asking, but I like to do that anyway. But I think one of the things that Blinken has said in the course of his visit with Netanyahu, one of the things they've been discussing together, is of course the post-war plan for Gaza, which presumably we're heading towards in the not too distant future. So, I mean, Anders, given what we've seen lately about the response to even like Sinwar's death, we've seen people like Abbas mourning the loss of Sinwar. So, you know, people like the PLO don't provide a kind of organization that you could necessarily trust to help rebuild Gaza. You've seen the UN mired in all sorts of corruption and anti-Israel sentiment. So, what possible options are there, do you think, that could take place as we get to the end of the war, and how to manage the Gaza Strip into the future?
Well, like Kirk, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can offer you my wishful thinking, Pollyanna-ish, what planet are you living on prediction. And in that prediction, the US would decide to join forces with Israel and take out the Iranian regime, you know, bomb the nuclear, take out the military facilities, and destroy their oil producing facilities. And we would see that regime toppled pretty quickly, I think. In addition to that, I think Israel should take a page from their detractors and actually colonize Gaza, West Bank, and probably most of, well, at least southern, but probably most of Lebanon. And just make it an Israeli protectorate for the foreseeable future until those countries have gotten a lesson in how countries should be run, the values of Western civilization. And that will probably take a while, but you know, I know that Israelis they don't want to get into this. They would rather just stay at home and tend to their gardens, but they're in the wrong part of the world for that. So I'm all for colonization.
Yeah. And of course, that's one of the options that they're discussing with Blinken right now, to occupy Gaza. But whatever happens at the end of it, the important thing is that you remove the ideology which is behind it, the Islamic push towards the destruction of Israel itself. So you can only do that by getting rid of all the UN corruption that teaches young children to hate Jews in the first place, and starting and rebuild a state like Israel, which allows everybody to be free, everybody to live a decent life based on the recognition of individual freedom. And that's ultimately how you're gonna have get out of this mess. And of course, as you mentioned, getting rid of the Iranian regime by allowing the free-loving people who are still in Iran, who are always there, and they've been suppressed since 79, to regain what their nation was, to go back to, you know, it wasn't perfect, of course, you know, make no mistake, but to move towards a place where they can actually live peaceful without having to do the bidding of a bunch of clerics, you know, headbutting the ground 5 times a day and all this kind of stuff.
I mean, we often talk about that. Sorry.
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, I think that's an important point you're making there. You know, we shouldn't paint Iran's future with rose-colored glasses, because there's no guarantee that a theocratic regime would be followed by you know, a Western-style democracy. But I would say that any other kind of authoritarian regime, secular authoritarian regime, is better than the Islamic totalitarianism that we see today and that is spread around the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, of course, whenever we're talking about politics, whether it's that broad level or who in particular any one country is in charge, you know, the point is often made from an objectivist standpoint that politics is down the line from culture, and that changing the culture within countries is the crucial part of it, changing the ideology and the attitudes, which is why the education side of it is so important. And of course, that relates as equally within US universities as it does within, you know, primary schools in the Gaza Strip, for example. So let me go around one more time then, just for any closing thoughts you've got on all of the moving parts here. I realize we've got many different strands to what's going on here, how we started with the potential, funding of Hezbollah being under this hospital, as we shall possibly see, all of the stuff to do with Blinken, Iran, and of course, the UNIFIL side of things. So, Kirk, any closing thoughts just to help wrap this all together?
No, I don't really have any closing thoughts at the moment. No, other than, Israel needs to stand up for itself. And likewise, the United States needs to grow some balls of steel on the foreign policy front.
And the same question to you, Anders. Any last thoughts?
Not really. My only thought would be that hopefully the what has been revealed here about the landfill, as Kirk calls it, in southern Lebanon, that will start to undermine the authority of the UN even more, and at some point or another, that especially here in the US, the people get fed up enough to decide that it's time to leave that organization.
I love your optimism, Anders. As we speak, Guterres is actually guest of the BRICS with China, Russia, and all the other stuff. So, yeah. Well,
but hey, China and India just decided to on their way of patrolling their contested border, I saw. So,
Yeah, whatever that's going to turn out to be. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, sorry, we're running out of time because we have the Atlas Shrugged book club. So, Anders, where can people find more about you?
You can find me on Substack, Anders Ingemarsson, one word, .substack.com. And you can find my book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, on any Amazon outlet near you. 3rd edition out in paperback and in Kindle version.
Brilliant. Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
Find me on Elon Musk's website at Kirk Wilcox, my name, and find me here on YouTube. There's a lot of, for those who are unfamiliar with me, I have a ton of YouTube videos, including dealing with this topic. So check it out if you have a chance, or when you have a chance.
And thank you also to our super chatters, including to Or Hirschfeld for your super chat. We appreciate that, and to all of you. And if you want to see any of the clips that we make, they're available on the Briefly Objective, the sister channel to this, and the description for that is below. With the Atlas Shrugged book club coming up in just a few minutes, we'll wrap there for the day. So thank you very much. And the Daily Objective and the reality show will be back on this channel tomorrow as well. So thanks a lot, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.